In today's video, I'm going to tell you why India is an audacious experiment and one of the world's most successful democracies. Now, despite the fact that Darshan Das is the only voter from this region, the Election Commission of India ensures that the polling booth is set up for him. Today's vlog is a rather interesting one because at the end of it, I am going to be sharing my full conversation history with a very interesting person for you to read. Today we're going to talk about a country that has marveled, fascinated and above all, exasperated those who have tried to understand it. When I asked ChatGPT for a quote on this land, this is what it came up with. Navigating this land is like reading a book where every page is a different genre. But somehow, the story still makes sense. Yes, it is a country that appears exhaustingly chaotic to those on the outside. But for those who live in there, it is but only a grand mela that they call home. No prizes for guessing. I am of course talking about Bharata, also known as Incredible India. Now, Independence Day is around the corner and so are the grand general elections. This is the time you will find a lot of bickering about India, both internally and externally. Internally, the ruling party and the opposition will throw a lot of muck at each other. Externally, suddenly you will find media houses talking about India as a failed democracy. However, I want you to know this one thing very clearly, no matter what anyone says. In the modern history of the world, there is perhaps any country that has a democracy that is as vibrant, functional and fascinating as India's. In today's video, I'm going to tell you why India is an audacious experiment and one of the world's most successful democracies. Reason number one, the genesis of India. Now, at the time of India's independence, J.E.C. Weldon, who was the former Bishop of Calcutta, made this rather awkward prediction about India. And this is what he said. As soon as the last British soldiers sailed from Bombay or Karachi, India would become the battlefield of antagonistic and religious forces. The peaceful and progressive civilization which the Great Britain had slowly but surely brought to India would shrivel up in a night. Only if Weldon was alive today and on Twitter, Indians would have a gala of a time trolling him every Independence Day. In fact, more than 7 decades after Weldon made this prediction, India is on the verge of celebrating its 76th Independence Day in 2023. In fact, Weldon isn't alone. Almost nobody saw how an audacious experiment by man called India could survive at all. Because most nations in the world are formed on the basis of a common religion, language or an enemy. India had none. India has no national language and has 22 official languages. For a country that is majority Hindu, India has more Muslims than Islamic nations like Bangladesh and in fact most of the Arab world. It has more Christians than the entire population of Australia. Now, just to give you an example of how unbelievably crazy this land is, I'm going to cite an example from one of India's greatest obsessions, the game of cricket. Now, in the early days of cricket in the 1970s and 80s, something fascinating happened. Now, Kapil Dev was the captain of the team and he hailed from the state of Haryana. He primarily spoke Hindi and Punjabi. The wicketkeeper of the same national team was Syed Kirmani, who hailed from Karnataka and thereby primarily spoke Kannada and also English. Now, anyone who follows the game of cricket knows how important and how critical is the interaction between a wicketkeeper and a captain. It is said that Kapil Dev and Syed Kirmani resorted to hand language in order to communicate with each other. Kapil Dev also started speaking a broken English. In fact, Syed Kirmani, a Pakka South Indian, started speaking Punjabi, which he picked up from his other teammates so that he could communicate with his captain and thereby successfully represent and lead the country towards victory. No sporting team anywhere else in the world can this ever happen. It happens only in India. The second and one of the most enduring reasons is our political maturity. Now, there may be 100 things wrong about our politicians, but there is one thing that's extremely beautiful about them. In most nations of the world, you will find the ex-presidents and the prime ministers being executed out of political rivalry. I have some numbers of ex-presidents and prime ministers that have been imprisoned since 1900s. In Italy, the number has been 10, Pakistan 8, South Korea 7, Hungary 6, Brazil 5, etc. In fact, as we speak, this is happening in the US with Donald Trump and in Pakistan with Imran Khan. India is one of those rare countries where the transfer of power happens non-violently and gracefully. There has never been an instance of an imprisonment of a former prime minister or a president by a political rival in India. And it's not that the political situation in India is not heated. It is extremely acerbic. But in spite of that, there is tremendous wisdom and maturity in the fact that none of our ruling party members go on to execute the former ruling members. Reason number 3, universal voting rights. Now, even the world's oldest democracy, America, initially gave voting rights only to white male adults over the age of 21 years. However, in India, voting rights were immediately granted to all its adult citizens, irrespective of their caste, creed, or gender. The government, in a very endearing move, goes to great lengths to ensure that its citizens go out and vote, even if it means going to one of the most challenging and remotest regions known to man. Now, one of the most remarkable stories in this context is of a lone voter in the Gir forest of Gujarat. Now, Banej is deep in the heart of the Gir forest in Gujarat, which, by the way, is the last refuge for the Asiatic lions in the wild. Now, Mahant Bharat Das Darshan Das is the caretaker of a temple in Banej, and he is the only resident of this remote part of the Gir forest. Now, despite the fact that Darshan Das is the only voter from this region, the Election Commission of India ensures that a polling booth is set up for him during every election cycle, be it the local, state or national. A team of election officials accompanied by security personnel, given the presence of wild animals, travels deep into the forest just to set up a booth for Darshan Das. God bless the Election Commission of India. Reason number 3. Education comes with marks and not power. So this happened once. An affluent woman in Delhi, accompanied by her equally affluent father, went to the then director of IIT Delhi seeking a personal favor and admission for her son. Then the director saw this boy's report card and he told the lady that, "Ma'am, sorry, there is no way that we can have your son into the IITs, but as a personal favor, I can get him an admission into the Imperial College of London," which he eventually did. What makes this story so remarkable are the characters involved. In case you haven't guessed this already, the characters involved in the story are Srimati Indira Gandhi, her father Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and Indira Gandhi's son Rajiv Gandhi. Even the most powerful family in the country can be denied admissions into the IIT. Now, there may be a million things wrong about the Indian education system, and it is. But there is one thing that you have to give it to our system. Education is largely affordable and accessible, and while corruption is an issue across most strata of the society, education is one area where corruption is the least. And in fact, at the highest quality of institutes, it doesn't exist. India is barely a country, it is a world in itself. How did this chaotic experiment of mankind last for 76 long years? God alone knows. You know, if God ever comes to me and tells me, "Adi, I'm on a tour of the universe and I just have one day to check on Earth. Will you show me around?" And on that one day, I would simply take him through India, mankind's most exciting experiment and the microcosm of human civilization as a whole. At the end of the tour, God would probably be amused and flustered, exactly how I'd want him to feel about us. Or maybe sometime in the future, when God is touring the universe again, and he asked the guide, "The last time I visited, there was this funny little place called India. Is it still around?" Not sure about God, but I'd expect the guide to say, "Yes, sir. It continues to remain one of our most successful experiments. Jai Hind, Jai Bharata." welcome to today's post video vlog, and today's vlog is a rather interesting one because at the end of it I am going to be sharing my full conversation history with a very interesting person for you to read. Yes, also very evidently I am not at my usual place, which is my house in Bombay where I generally do these vlogs. Why this is so? Because I was supposed to shoot this vlog yesterday, but then I got occupied with a controversial incident that happened somewhere else, and that pretty much took most of my time yesterday. And then at night I fly to Bangalore, where I landed today morning at around 3 a.m., which is pretty much the time that I usually get up. And in hindsight, turns out that Bangalore is actually not a bad place to shoot this vlog, because the origins of the project that I'm going to tell you about today in many ways lies in the city of Bangalore. So here I am at a friend's place who is currently not here. As you can see, there's a baby photo. That's because they recently delivered a beautiful girl child, and he's in Hyderabad while I occupy his space here. So what is this project about? Now, many years ago, I set on an unfinished business of solving a problem. Now, before I get to the problem itself, what happened after I set on that journey? My debut book, The Great Indian Obsession, became a bestseller. I then gave a TEDx talk that went viral, and suddenly I found myself traveling all over the world delivering talks. But there was one big problem: I didn't have any answers. I found myself moving to a monastery for 3 years. Of course, when you're in the monastery, the only problem or the only mystery that you're solving is that of life itself. So of course, the problem that I set out to solve took a backseat. And then of course, when I moved out of the monastery, I got myself into some trouble. Now, this is a poem that I wrote actually about that phase of my life. And this is actually a sneak peek into my second book. This poem is right from my second book. So here's a little sneak peek for you. Just early this year, I got out of that situation and slowly started building myself up. But this unfinished business that I started many years ago continued to haunt me every single day. And then one day, the longing to go back to that problem became so intense that I just wanted to discuss it with someone. And I had no clue who, because the idea seemed too crazy to start off with. So I didn't really want to freak anyone out. And that's when I decided to share my problem with this person. Any guesses who I'm talking about? No? Of course, I'm talking about ChatGPT. So I kept discussing the problem with ChatGPT as my co-founder. ChatGPT and I got talking. We came up with a detailed plan, a detailed proposal. Of course, the first and most important milestone that we wanted to hit was to raise funds. Now, there is one thing I always knew about this project, that if I successfully manage to raise the first funds for this project is no longer just a crazy idea from a crazy guy. I knew it all while. Just the first funds. I knew if somehow the universe gives me the first funds to get things moving, this project is on. Right? So then ChatGPT and I, we got discussing as to who we could reach out to. We came up with a potential list of people we could reach out to. And I did reach out to those people, and I'm going to share some of my email interactions that we exchanged, and this includes reaching out to some billionaire people. And so I have a decent history of writing successful cold emails in the past. So I quickly put together some compelling narratives. Also got it reviewed by ChatGPT, and quickly put together a list of people I could send out potential fundraiser emails to. Also took ChatGPT's help in putting together that list. Eventually ended up sending. Now, as one would expect with cold emails, most of the mails are either ignored or rejected. And I know this because I use an email tracker. So I know if someone's really opened an email, right, or not. And if they have opened an email and chosen not to respond, I also know that as well. So it's a pretty disappointing start. Then, of course, the first breakthrough happened when this young Indian billionaire in India responded to my email and connected me to his team. Unfortunately, there was not a match in interest in what the billionaire's non-profit really focuses on and what we were trying to do. So things couldn't move forward. Then fortunately, another young Indian crypto billionaire, again he connected me with his team, but yet again there was no match in what his non-profit focuses on, which was mostly health related stuff and what we were really trying to do. And then a Silicon Valley legendary investor responded to my email. While he couldn't commit to funding the project as yet, but he curiously used one line on the email which kind of got me thinking about the scope of the project and whether we should change it, which I eventually did. And then something massive happened. I received this email and this changed everything. Now, what is this project about? I'm going to actually share my entire conversation with ChatGPT so that you can figure it out by yourself. Right? So if you want to read the chat history, please drop in a comment on this video and I will respond to you with the link. Okay? Okay? Cool? Fantastic. Do read the conversation and let me know how it went, okay? Awesome. Bye, baby. Bye.